Want to stop in quickly and just welcome everybody and welcome everybody online. This is an important meeting because local control funding is how we allocate the funding that we receive from the government. And you, as our parent partners, are part of this conversation and part of the decision making in our district. So I'm going to hand it over to the experts, and I'm sure that you'll have a Q&A after if you have any questions about what you hear today. But just welcome and thank you so much for being here and being a part of this meeting.
Yeah. And with that, thank you, Superintendent. I would like to present Dr. Tracy Pumilia, who will be presenting the LCAP report. Thank you.
Can stand, the owl will catch you, or you can sit here and control. What would you like?
I can sit here and control actually, and I'll just stand. Okay. Dr. King, do we need to talk about translations and things like that?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Please, if you are English speaking on Zoom, choose the English channel for interpretation because we may have questions in Spanish that you'll want to understand. If you are Spanish speaking, please click Español on that. Okay, para los que necesitan interpretación, por favor, oprime el globo que está en su pantalla que dice interpretación y seleccione Español.
Muy bien, gracias. All right, so good morning, everybody. Again, I'm very happy that you're here. Happy to see you all. Happy anybody who is joining us via Zoom. Wanted to get us started in our process for the local control accountability plan. That is what an LCAP stands for. So you can see those 4 words: local control, meaning locally we control, and locally we take accountability for the plan of our actions, of what we want to be doing to support our students. Now, you also see the 3 years there, 2024 to 2027. Last year, I came in front of you with a very similar looking presentation, and we do that on purpose because it's a 3-year plan. So we've just completed year 1, and now we're going into year 2. So for our brains to kind of understand that it's still part of the same plan, we use a similar format for the presentation. And then what we will do is show you kind of where we are and what we're going to be planning for next year, because that's where we are right now, is planning for year 2 and getting your feedback on that. Enter and space bar. Excuse me for a second. We have a little bit of technical difficulties. It wants to stay on this slide. Or just use the trackpad. Got it. Thank you so much. As a quick summary of what the LCAP really requires, the requirement is for us to identify and meet the needs of our unduplicated pupils, or students that are considered unduplicated. I want to put a face to an unduplicated pupil. An unduplicated pupil just means that there are students who come to school already knowing English, who come from families that are not from low income, who have highly educated. They're coming from a place where there are less barriers for them to access their an education. In California, in the LCAP, if you come from a low-income household, if you are learning English, if you are in the foster care system, the foster youth system, that will qualify you as a student who will receive supplemental funding. All right, so that's where this idea of extra funding and us meeting those extra needs comes in with the LCAP. So when we look at our students, and please know that these numbers that we have, this is the number of, when it says LI, that's the number of low-income students we had on any given day that was reported back in October. That number will fluctuate. Sometimes we'll have 3,950. Sometimes we'll have 3,842, right? But it's really around 3,900 low-income students. English learners, we have over 1,200 students. ELs is English learners. We also have to look at students who have been English learners for 6 years or longer. So the LTEL stands for long-term English learners. And we track and we try to monitor and we try to help them become proficient in English. Some students, it takes longer than the 5 years. It's 3 to 7 years for a student to gain proficiency in English, depending on that student's circumstances. If they're in the program and still learning English beyond 6 years, then we want to make sure that we're doing everything that they can to be able to have that proficiency in English. The number of foster youth also fluctuates. At the time we had it here, we had about 21 students. And then we had 51 students who were classified as homeless at the time that we did this. Now, we call that unduplicated because a student can come from a low-income household and they can be learning English, but we don't count that student twice. So,
Holly, I don't like to hear my voice. But we got that. Are everything okay with the Zoom and everything?
so we don't count that student twice. So then when it's unduplicated, we will count the number of students who are just low income. And if they also happen to be English learners, we won't count them a second time. So they take this whole group and then just count them one time. That's what it means by unduplicated, right? There's a group of students that aren't counted for the LCAP purposes, but we still always want to make sure that they're continuing their progress. And this is our nice little group of students here that we call affectionately our RFEP students. They're reclassified. They started off over here as an English learner. Then they actually learned English. They gained proficiency. They met all of the markers, learning English through their classroom and through their English language development, through their academic achievement, and they became reclassified. We have 760 students who are reclassified. So they don't, we always want to make sure that they continue to have that same achievement. So we monitor and ensure that they're still getting the supports that they need. And I like to compare this to maybe any of us who might speak a second language. That doesn't mean that you think in that language, that you're completely fluent in that other language. You have to continuously develop that second language. I know I have to in Spanish. Right? I have a hard time listening to the radio in Spanish still, so I know that it's hard for me. So for students who have another language at home, and they have enough in English, we have to continuously develop that, make sure that they're getting it. Now, what I'm going to do here is take this group of students because, again, we are required to monitor their growth. So in the LCAP, we say we're going to make sure that they are achieving in their academic achievement. Okay, so when we're looking at iReady data, that is one assessment that we look at over the course of the year. And overall, we're able to see that in December, in reading and in math, you can see the red scores. They were at 36% and 25% respectively. And then we had a growth going to 44% and 36% in reading and math, respectively, in March. This percentage is a proficiency toward grade level standards. So it's toward the end of the year. So this number should go up. We want it to go up because by May and June, we want, of course, 100%, right? But we had here in March this growth from 35 to 44. So we knew that we were going in the right direction. Now I'm going to show you the data. That's an overall. Now I'm going to show you the data. There's a lot of little numbers, so I'm going to let it give you a chance to take a look at it. So you can see that our low income students similarly went from 32 to 41 in reading and 22 to 33. So similar jumps. That's another thing that we're looking for. Is there a group that does not make a similar jump as our overall group? So we have those kinds of conversations inside the schools. The schools do this data analysis with their teachers. They do this at the school site. This is an overall, and we do this at the district level. And so we monitor this and we have our meetings with our principals. Our principals have our meetings with our teacher leaders, and our teacher leaders and our teachers will come together to have conversations and make plans to keep the progress in the right direction. So you can see this is where we were in March. Because yes.
I just want to make a comment here. I really like how it's categorized in different groups. But I was just wondering, since we are also dividing our English learners into long-term English learner, I was wondering if we are missing a group, and I'm referring to English learners with IEP. That was just a thought.
It's a great thought. And that is something that we do have that conversation, and we bring that into our conversations across the board. Special education, our students have individualized education plans. They have IEPs, and the LCAP doesn't have a specific special education component to it, but I do want to assure all of our families that we do look at students with disabilities and the scores with our students with disabilities, and particularly that intersection of students with disabilities who are learning English and ensuring that they are making progress in English to be able to do the academic achievement. And those conversations for any of our families who join us in the Special Needs Committee, we do have those conversations, and we in the Educational Services Department, I know Dr. Julie Kane, along with Ms. Asman and the Special Education Department, we have a lot of conversations together, and basically best practices, things to continue to do, and then things that we want to maybe refine a little bit more. Would you want to add anything to that?
No, but I know we have great advocates in here for our students with special needs, and I appreciate you always bringing that up. And it's a good time to remind everyone that there's a meeting coming up on the 20th, right? Is the final meeting for our Families with Special Needs Support Group. And so I encourage anyone who has questions or wants to learn more about that to attend. And absolutely. And Tanya's good at keeping me on my toes, making sure that we're always looking at the data that way. So thank you.
Yeah, true. We have that date. Oh, yes.
Are we on progress to meet our goals?
So yes. Are we on progress to get to 100%? Not quite yet. We're getting there.
To meet our goals?
Yes, we are on progress to meet our goals. So what happens is that we'll have certain aspects of these things to kind of come up. Now we'll have different, when we go into it, we'll be looking also at SBAC data, and we'll be looking at other local data. So this is just one data point. So overall, as we're making our final document, we will see that there are areas in which we have made our goals and some areas in which we are not making our goals. We've made limited progress, just very frankly. And one of the areas you'll see is that we're really now thinking about the services and the needs of our long-term English learners. Because now that we have this data point with our iReady, we can see that they are not making the progress that we would as the other students are. So if other students are making on average about a 10-point growth, and then our long-term English learners are having more struggles with that, we want to provide an extra dose of support for our long-term English learners.
Sunny, with his hand raised.
Morning.
Hi, good morning.
So what I don't see on there is I have two questions. One, do we have the data from last year to see where they ended and where they started at the beginning of this year for our overall data? Like, was there a 10% dip from March or June or May of last year to December? And so that's my first question.
Well, Tony, I didn't quite catch the last part, but I'm hearing what you're saying. I guess what you're saying is, are we doing better than we did at this time last year?
Oh,
Is essentially what you're asking?
Sunny, is that it would be a
That's one piece of it, yes.
Okay. You know what I can do is the answer is yes, we are doing, we are more on track this year than we were a year ago. I don't have the exact numbers, but I can pretty easily get that for us as a question. We are noting all of the questions that come up in today's presentation, and then we will provide a written response. So with that, we can provide that information. And that one we do have readily available, yes. What was your second question?
So related to my first question, do you have this same data for last year, like from December of 2023, or yes, 20
Yes.
to March of 2024?
We do.
And was there a similar growth or drop? Like, for example, in March or in May of last year, and we are looking at scores for December of this year, was there a substantial drop between that time period? And I guess my specific point is, if they're gaining 10 points between the school year, and then by the time that we start again in December, they are losing 10 points, then we haven't really gained anything overall. Does that make sense?
I think so. The one thing is to kind of keep in mind, yes. So you would want to see that in December of last year, we were at a different place than at 35% this year to show that growth.
Correct. Yeah. I mean,
So
otherwise.
Yes, I have this slide. I have this slide from last year when I was in front of the group last year, and I can just do a very simple comparison so that you can all see that. So we'll have that answer for you shortly.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then my other question was so I'm noticing all of these different groups. The one group I'm not seeing is not any of these things. Not English learners, let's say they're English proficient and they're not low income. What are they would also be considered unduplicated, maybe not like.
Yeah.
So yes, I think what we do for the LCAP purposes, what we have to do in our LCAP is to specifically call out our students in our unduplicated counts. And uh, we will compare it kind of to the overall, which we have up on top with the 35 and the 44 on the top of the slide. We do have that data for all students. We also have students who are not socioeconomically disadvantaged, the non-low income or the English fluent proficient classification for students who already know English. We do have that data. And it sounds to me like perhaps what I can come to outside of an LCAP presentation is provide an overall data presentation that shows all of the data groups that are outside of the LCAP requirements. I can do that very easily, and I'm happy to do that at any given time during the school year. If the DPAC and or the Committee of Multilingual Learners would like me to kind of come with a presentation, I'm happy to do that during your agenda planning. So presidents kind of think about that and where you would want to do that. I can do that at the beginning of the year and show how we're starting and provide maybe SBAC data to do that as a comparison. If I do it more in the middle of the year, like in March, I can use iReady data, which shows kind of real-time information. So that's something that you'll want to think about, and then just invite me to come to do that, and I'd be happy to do that.
I think to clarify something that I think Sunny was kind of leading towards, I think the principle of the test, right, correct me if I'm wrong, but if a student if the students learn only what they're supposed to learn in, like, say, third grade, in May, when they take that final assessment, you'd have like 100% proficiency, right? If they learned everything they were supposed to learn in third grade, the teachers taught them, they'd all be proficient, right? When they come back the next year, they're being tested on what they should learn in fourth grade, but they haven't learned anything yet. So you'd go from 100% proficiency to 0% proficiency if students only learned what we taught them in school. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a very general, like, simplified version of what the test is supposed to do.
It's a very
So we would
simplified
always
version.
have a big drop off.
Yes, it's also kind of taking into account where you are in the school year.
Okay.
So there's a I can also go more into detail about these proficiency markers. We can use these proficiency markers from year to year to examine the readiness of our students from December of one year to December of another year. To say that we're going to have a 0% is probably, there are always students who have various measures of readiness for that grade level standards.
If they only learned what we
Yeah,
taught them.
and I appreciated that delineation, because it's exactly that. If we're in a vacuum, that without them having any other outside experiences, that we could control that in a clinical setting, but we can't. If this is an art, it's a social science.
What the test is and what it's measuring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One more thing, from the December percentages, and I don't want to use realistic, but what is the kind of target percentage that we want to be at come March? I mean, there must be something that we have set up, right? Of expectancy. So if like in December, the 35% on the reading and math, 25%, we're looking towards March. What is like our goal for that part, which you asked earlier, I think, where are we going to sit, or where should we be sitting? It's like,
Where did we start, and what was the actual goal
Right.
that we had set?
Right. So what I can do is I can just, we'll usually use a bit of a formula to say, and I'm making a generalization here. If you start at 5%, if you double that and go to 10%, that's a 50%, that's a big jump, right? But that's a 5 percentage point gain. And when you're much lower, it's easier to do that. When you start to get higher, you start thinking in like 3 to 5 percentage point gains is what you're hoping for year after year for changes to kind of happen. I would love to see our reading and math scores in December to be closer to the 40s and 50s mark. right? Because I want them to be halfway through and getting there to that point. So that's what I want to be able to see. And that is in my head what I'm working toward. What I'm also understanding is that we have new curricula, we have these outside circumstances coming in outside of the clinic for us to be able to say, this is where we started. We started probably last year more in the lower 30s to get to here. And now we are making progress. We're getting to 35%. Hopefully next year we'll be closer to the 44s and then we can just keep making progress. But you will see that our math continues to be a focus. And you'll see going into some of our actions for next year, when we look at this, this is what we think we need to do. And I want to share some of those things with you so that you can see that we look at the data kind of holistically and say, we want to go better. We want math. This is our first year doing a math curriculum. So we kind of expect a little bit of a dip because that's a normal progression when we're bringing in a new program. We're getting used to teaching it with that new program. So there's a little bit of that. At the same time, though, we definitely aren't okay with a 25% proficiency in December.
For this data, it's only the district because this is I-ready. It's only our district.
Right.
There is a comparison with the state, like where we are, like when we see dashboard, the California dashboard, where we are and the standards at the state level. This is our district.
This is a local data point, and it's not a comparison. So there are lots of things that I can bring to you to kind of bring that comparison and things like that. And those kinds of questions, I can craft a more comprehensive data presentation. Today's presentation is just for you to see what we did and then what our plans, what are we going to do differently? That's truly what today's conversation is. You're asking me, what are these things? And you also have to ask me, what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So let's make sure that you have a good idea of those things coming in. But I can assure you that we are going to be kind of moving into these actions to kind of address those questions that you have. Okay, thank you. Now, I want to see this in a easier way. We always have 4 goals. On the side of the wall there, you see our 4 goals, right? And those 4 goals translate in our LCAP with some actions that are designed to meet our LCAP goals. So for example, when we're looking at goal 1, we have increasing academic achievement. They sit over here on the left side of the slide. These 2 columns, they're direct supports for academic instruction and additional academic supports. Another thing you can kind of talk about it as directly touching the student in the first column, and then kind of indirectly touching the student in the second column. Does that make sense? Yeah. So professional learning, a teacher goes through professional learning to help their classroom, that directly supports the student inside the classroom, right? Grade level collaboration, they're planning and they're looking at the data. Grade level collaboration is when 3 teachers from the grade level come together, they look at their student data and they collaborate on what they're going to do about that student, about their students, and help them out. So we have a whole number of actions here. When we're looking at the purple column with additional academic supports, the fact that we have additional teachers to reduce the class size so that we don't have classes of 32 students in kindergarten, for example, or that's not something that is actually touching a student. But we do allocate money in the LCAP to support the class size of 26 or below in grades K through 3. Okay. Computer technicians or library clerk hours for students to be able to access the library over and above what is given in the general fund. And I believe they're 5 hours. Yeah, they're a 5-hour position because Saturday school to be able to recapture learning lost for our students who are absent. And then we provide professional development for our our paraprofessionals and classified staff. In also, goal 2 also helps that because for them to be able to have high quality actions and services, also support kind of the direct supports, additional academic supports, and behavioral and social emotional supports for students. So ensuring that we have, these are for goals 1 and 2. Goal 3 is improving parent and student engagement. So we want to make sure that the behavioral, social, emotional supports and support for parents kind of come into those columns and they support goal 3. And then goal 4 about providing 21st century learning. We want to call out that the LCAP has a full program to support the makerspace in robotics and engineering, the TREC program. And so that program is built in the LCAP. So if anybody saw our first Lego League live stream, which was amazing. It was so much fun to see. Those came out of the program that is funded out of the LCAP. What I'm going to do now is talk a little bit now about what we're going to do next year. So that last slide just said, these are all the things that we do that support our goals, our district goals. What are we going to do differently? I want to highlight this one about teacher leaders teaching alongside teachers. We've had teacher leaders as a completely appreciated and necessary for part of our formula in serving our students. We have teachers in the classroom, and then they support teachers inside the classroom. With teacher leaders, they provide support as far as if there's a teaching strategy that they want to work on, they'll work on it together. They'll plan together. They'll look at data together outside the collaboration. And some teachers will say, hey, can you come and help me? I want to work on this part, especially because we have a new math program and I'm not understanding the flow that well. So they'll work together. And we find that those classrooms that have that strong connection of the teacher leaders going inside the classroom, we're finding a correlation that their students have better outcomes, right? So in that same vein, we want to create a system for next year, which is different. Before it was just, if you want to come in, I have a full calendar and you can come in here for 30 minutes here, teacher, you can sign up for my hours if I'm a teacher leader. Now we're going to create a schedule for each of the teacher leaders to work with every teacher on a set schedule. So in grades K1 and 2, we'll be working in language arts and literacy. So we'll really work on early learning, and they're going to be working with every teacher on a bit of a schedule to work and plan together, be a partner teacher along with the teacher, just to do a unit together to see what kinds of language development kinds of activities and make sure that we're really implementing the benchmark curriculum the way it's intended and ensuring it's meeting the needs of our students, right? Here's an example in the upper grades, in grades 3 through 5, where we will have our math teacher leaders, our math TOSAs, working with our teachers here as an example. We know from our data, when we look at the iReady data, the biggest struggle is with understanding fractions. So when we look at the math curriculum, that's a 4th grade heavy topic, but it's introduced in 3rd grade, and it's also reinforced in 5th grade. So if you look over the year, trimester 1, units 1 through 3, it's heavy in 4th grade on fractions in units 1 through 3. So the Math TOSA will focus on 4th grade and work with the 4th grade team on those units and teach along with it and plan together and be partner teachers so that they can really, really understand what's holding up a student's understanding of fractions and be able to provide that support. So essentially, a 4th grade teacher in trimester 1 will have an additional teacher in math who's a math expert, right? And they're in the classroom. In trimester 2, the math teacher leader would then go to the 5th grade and really support the unit 4. And then same thing in trimester 3, 3rd grade's going to be unit 5, and then they're going to work in trimester 3 in unit 5 with the 3rd grade and do the similar kind of a thing. So that is something that is quite different. We haven't done that. We've always done it as a, hey, sign up if you want some help. So it's been a little bit of like a, hey, we're here if you need us kind of a strategy, which is great if 100% of our students are doing great. But we have 25% of our students that are doing okay. So we have to up that urgency of, you know what, you're doing a great job in this part. Let me just help. And let's put all hands on deck to help all of our students. So that's the strategy that I wanted to highlight in that first column. Oh, I had it nicely animated so that you can see that we're going through, that they're going to plan together and teach fractions in order to support the students with this difficult standard. And when you translate it and you bring it down, it turns into, because if you have 3 teachers at a grade level, it really is about 3 weeks. But that 3 weeks is going to be intense. It's like high intensity, right? You're with them and you're really doing it together. And the whole idea is for it to translate and continue forward. Okay. Now I'm going to look at the second column and let's take a look at Saturday school. We had we're really pleased with our efforts in reducing chronic absenteeism. This number I do remember, Ms. Lydia, in 2023, we were at 30% chronically absent. In 2024, we brought that down to 20% chronically absent. And we do attribute Saturday school as supporting that engagement, re-engagement strategies. And so our goal, though, is to continue that reduction so that actually we don't really need Saturday school because we don't want so many students having this need to go to Saturday school. But we are going to increase it. We're going to really hit it hard so that we can go down. So this year we had 4 Saturday schools. We're going to increase it. And we're going to have a fall strategy like in October and then another one in the spring. So we're going to actually have 10 Saturday schools next year. Another difference. That's a change in supporting our absenteeism. In a similar way, the PBIS program, and we love our acronyms. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but does anybody know what PBIS stands for? Your kids are always probably talking about, I got a PBIS ticket or something like that, or a SOAR ticket.
Is it a positive behavior intervention system?
I wish I had a Starbucks card for you.
Care cash.
Thank you. You've been paying attention. You've been coming to these meetings.
Yeah, listen to my son when he comes from school,
Thank you for listening. And I appreciate your son saying the whole thing too and knowing himself what it means. These letters just turn into this meaningless letters sometimes. So it's important.
These abbreviations and sometimes
We really do. Yeah, we really, really do. There's nobody like us with that. So the whole concept of creating a positive school culture is to highlight the positive, right? And so what we've been doing, I want to highlight something that we're doing differently is we're actually taking data. Again, we are using data-informed practices. So we're looking at the data of our implementation. You know, you can do the tickets, you can go to the store and get your tickets, you can get these rewards and get recognized, but we want to see how it's happening inside the classroom. We want to be able to see evidence of it. So we've started this ACER. You don't have to worry too much about the acronym for this, but it's the Authorized California PBIS External Reviewer Protocol. So it's not just us saying, hey, we're doing the PBIS. We're actually going to take data on how are we implementing it. So basically all sites are participating, and we have 2 people walking in to see evidence of a positive school culture. And so here are this walkthrough tool. It's along these 4 areas. They look at the physical environment of the classroom, right? Is it designed to be effective for students to move around comfortably, have the flow, have a positive environment inside the classroom? Are the routines predictable? It's so important for students to understand the structure, and it has to be evident. Is there active supervision and fostering of positive relationships? So we'll be looking at that. We look at the classroom, we look at what's going on inside the classroom, we look at what's going on in the hallways, we look at what's going on by the bathroom, we look and see what's going on in the lunchroom, in the cafeteria, school office. Anytime there are playground, I didn't even say playground, most important area, right? Is there active supervision going on? Are there opportunities for adults to be engaging with students to foster positive relationships? So they're looking for evidence, and there's like little check marks, right? Is there evidence? Acknowledging that personal connection with a student. And we have something called a 5-to-1 rule. Does that make sense to anybody? Think about, I love to say this in my kindergarten orientations when I was a principal. I would say we as parents are so used to barking orders at our kids and we don't even realize it. I'll say I talk to my kids all the time. I tell them to put on their shoes. I tell them to go put their cup in the sink. I tell them to hurry up. I love to tell my kids to hurry up. And you start to realize that your conversations with them are very like ordering, and it doesn't really engage in a two-way, conversation. So I would say, we as adults have to kind of slow down a little bit and allow our our children to engage in those conversations. Are you almost ready to go, as opposed to hurrying, right? What do you want to wear today? Here are your 2 choices. We have 90 seconds to decide because and we're going to do it that way. So those kinds of elements, you start to think about yourself in a positive light. Hey, we got ready super fast today. I'm so glad we can leave on time. That's a positive acknowledgement of your child doing something along with you. And that's a positive acknowledgement. You want to have 5 of those positive interactions with your children. You don't have to say to them, good job, good job, good job all the time. It's more of a, hey, you put that bowl in the first time I asked you, or you did it without me even asking you. Wow, thanks so much. That's a positive interaction. You do that 5 times because there will be one redirection. We call it in education, we'll call it a redirection. Well, we'll say, sweetheart, I've asked you 3 times to sit down. I'm telling you now to sit down, right? It becomes a little bit more of a redirection. Or, sweetheart, we have to put those scissors back. We have to walk safely with those scissors, not like this, right? So those kinds of things is called a redirection. And our brains are so hardwired. This is a scientific understanding that our brains are hardwired for negativity. Unfortunately, we are negatively wired. So I love to tell the story of my 27-year-old son who sees a very dear friend of mine who was a third grade teacher. He never had her, but his first interaction was with her telling him to stop running in the hallways. That was all it was. And he thinks she's the meanest teacher in the world because his first interaction with her was a redirection. And it was a simple redirection of like, she probably yelled at like, stop running. And that's turned into something because we are negatively framed, right, in our brains. So it's good information for us to always say something like, we're walking in the hallways. And then so we do those kinds of things to make sure that we're positively framing our conversations with our students. That is what an acknowledgement is. And I know I'm taking a lot of time on this, but I want you to understand that's so important. It's so important at home and it's so important in school. And we can't make any changes in our school climate until we have the data to say, this is where we're doing really well. This is what we have to work on. Because improving school climate is a big thing. Now we have ways to find out what areas we want to improve on, right? So we're taking that data. Okay, so that's something that we are doing differently. Yes.
I would appreciate a presentation like this at my school for all of our parents, telling them exactly what the point of PBIS is, and so that we can share the same goals and everything you just explained to us, show them what this picture is. Because this is like the acknowledgement is a big thing. I came from a school where everybody knew that the kid who had a blue slip was late and they were bad. They were late. So they were walking down the hall with their blue slip because they were late. To a school where they put positive messages if you're late. Have a great day. Because the reality is that it's probably the parents' fault that the child is late. They have nothing to do with it. So the positive acknowledgement is a great tool for kids and it's easy enough to do. And we just have to spread it and say those things and tell our parents how to do it. Because it's that easy, but you have to remind us. And a yearly presentation at the beginning of the year for schools, that might be a great idea.
We'd love to do that. We'd love to do that. Yes. Yes.
In the past, in the FDR, the social worker, Ms. Michael, usually had a workshop about PBIS. It was really wonderful. Explain to the parents how we use also PBIS at home with our kids. So that workshop, it was wonderful. Maybe she could also talk with the other social workers and all the schools could have some workshop like that because I enjoy a lot of this workshop.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Similar to that on the chat. It's from Grisela Vigil. Would it be possible to train parents how to use the PBIS classroom walkthrough tool and participate during walkthrough days to support in collecting this data? Those you probably would.
That's a question that I can ask. I will find out. I hesitate right now in that one of them is meant for an internal for us to kind of look at where we are right now. And I think that once we bring in, I don't know what that training entails, honestly. So that's what I would have to just take a look at because these are people who have been trained for years in the PBIS protocols and all of the elements that we're looking for. And so I'd have to just take a look and see what that training entails and who's involved in coming to do the walkthroughs. I think the actual tool itself and taking a look at it and then being able to gauge kind of how you see the school climate coming through as a parent through a parent's eyes, I think is a really important and a piece of this for us to all be partners together. When we're doing our self-assessments and things like that, it might be more of a thing where we're doing it ourselves to be able to say this is where we are because we're looking in the mirror ourselves to kind of come to those things. But it's good for all of our partners to understand what that means when we're looking in the mirror to do that.
I wanna
I had a good experience. I have actually currently a good experience with my daughter with this program. Um, she's been doing okay most of the time. That's why I gotta say it's kind of like a success of the program, and especially at Billy Mitchell where my student goes to. Uh, I am right now. I'm not working, and I'm kind of taking her for walks and everything. And I had a bad experience towards a teacher, and it's not in my daughter's school. It's in the near one, my school. Um, this teacher on first day was yelling to one of the girls, and I understand, I would say from 20 kids, it was the only one running around, but on first day, she yelled at her really, really loud for me to hear when I was on the walk. And it took me probably a week to say something. And I hesitate to say because I understand all the pressure the teachers have on getting on time. It's to me, my daughter says, I don't finish this because we're always in rush. They try to finish things like as fast as possible. But when you say we look in the mirror as a parent, sometimes I don't have the time to say we have these minutes to get ready. Sometimes they don't pay attention and it's like, I need you ready now. And that's why it took me so long to talk about this teacher. The only thing I did, I went inside and I told the person at the front desk, I saw a teacher and since I don't know her, I was just passing by, but that's someone's kid. And mom would have been like, "L- let's just walk to her, please pay attention." But the way she yelled, and I told the person, so when you say this and you suggest, let's do this for our parents, is there any way that you at everyone are, I'm supposed to train, but reminded every time the teachers and that we as a neighborhood, we're walking around, we're seeing.
Appreciate it.
And I understand sometimes it's don't run in the hallway. Sometimes we need to be also straightforward. Kids, I think there has to be some balance. You cannot always have the choice. You do it now or it's gone your chance to do it right. So I'm not sure if this program has, as you did with math, they have an specialist on this, and then they supporting the first person. And you need to have someone looking over them or paying attention to all those things, especially this one.
I appreciate that question. And I also appreciate you reflecting on your own experience and then still stepping forward to say something. There, we all make those decisions. We all may have a situation where we say, well, what do I want to do with this information? And so it took you that time and you did something with that information. And I thank you for that.
Yeah. Since it took me a week, sorry that I feel it. It took me a week because I was hesitating that I would say something. But my first thought is, how about the teachers around? Did anyone said something about that, or nobody saw it as something that had to be looked at? And I saw plenty of staff around, and everyone saw that as normal, or they know the kid, like she said, there are trouble kids, I know. But sometimes we need to say, You're usually late, but we're happy you're here. Can you try tomorrow be early?" Or to the parent, the same thing. Usually it's late, hope your things are going well. And that would be like positive encouragement to community too.
I will say that in our work with looking at iReady and looking at it by class, that has really allowed us to use the data that we have right in front of us to talk with what's going on in our classrooms. So we do intend for this tool to help us have those conversations, those similar conversations with our schools and with our principals to say, this is what we're seeing. So now we can say, we might not be seeing as much of the acknowledgement if that's, if we're hearing those kinds of things, we have to pay a little bit more attention to the 5-to-1 rule, for example. These specialists is something that if we need to do that, we will. If the data shows that we don't have the capacity to change that, when we need specialized training, we will absolutely do that. Right now, what we have is a need to probably better implement our second step program, which we're also looking at. And we're also looking at our social workers, and we have our community school site coordinators who's going to be supporting kind of the school climate as well as the academic. So it might still be a year of us saying, these are the things we have to do differently before we get to a point where we say we really need to work on our overall, we call it tier 1, or what we always do kinds of evidence-based practices. So we're going to take data on those evidence-based practices, but I do appreciate the things that you say. Yes, those are always on the table if we need to do that. So thank you for that. It is 10 o'clock, so I'm just going to go very quickly. Here's another thing in the 4th column, and I don't think it makes a ton of sense for people to have something called site allocations for support for parents that also support students. This site allocations, I want to explain that to you. So if you see our LCAP, what the site allocation means. If you're on the on the school site council, all schools have to create their own school plan. It's called the single plan for student achievement. And the school site councils have the goals in front of them. They also have to implement the 4 goals at the school site, right? So with the SIPSA, we have allocated money from the LCAP to support the students at their sites. So when we say site allocation, that means depending on their enrollment numbers of the unduplicated students, they will be given an allocation to support their students in their way, because we look at it through a district lens, but sometimes a school site has specific needs, or not sometimes, always. A school site is its own ecosystem. It's its own system, and it has needs that might be differing a little bit from another school's needs. So the site allocations are meant to address those specific needs. These are some examples of actions that we have seen from our school site plans. Maybe some additional hours for school events, so that a community liaison or a clerk or some student supervision aides to come and support with the parent night or a family night, right? Or perhaps to getting some materials and support to support family workshops, right? Those are some things that help with our parent engagement, and it's right here within the school, within the allocation, and it's under the guise of site allocations. So I just wanted to explain that. That to me isn't so much of a difference. We're not necessarily doing anything differently in this. I just wanted to explain what that line item in the LCAP means for you all. Okay? Yes.
I have a question. So, does that mean that, let's say, if for the purpose of student and parent engagement, my son is in 5th grade right now, and I have never had a meeting or a friendly meeting with any of the IEP parents. So let's say if I propose to the school that it will be a good idea for the parents to know that specific group to have a friendly meeting at the school, does that mean that the school will facilitate that meeting specifically, like let's say with water and some snacks so we can get together and get to know each other for like 40 minutes, an hour? Is that what this also means?
You could, yes. So if you have an idea that you want to bring to your school site to increase parent engagement, and you say that I really think that this is something that could really help us, you bring it to the principal, bring it to the school site council, and they'll say, great idea, let's do that. Or they might make it broader and they might say, let's do this for different things. It sparks an idea and then allows that conversation to happen. Yeah.
I'll just add to that. Remember, in your school site council, you have the LCAP funds are in there and your Title I allocation. And within your Title I allocation, you have Title I parent involvement, right? So there are multiple ways that might be funded. And the principal can help decide which bucket of funds that comes from. Typically, Title I is for academic achievement, but parent involvement is for anything around student achievement. And so that would be an ideal way as well. So there are definitely funding sources there. It's just a matter of, and I love the idea of essentially you're saying we have a district-wide group. I'd love to have one at our site. And, ideally, maybe we'd have one at every site where families can get together and you have that smaller group connection in addition to the larger group one. So that's, fabulous idea.
If I could just add to that, some people may not want to know who's on an IEP or not because of confidentiality issues. However, a classroom meetup would be awesome. So all the parents in the classroom can be together, not just the ones with the IEP, but, and start building that community. Just a classroom meetup for teachers, for the parents of that class.
And like Dr. Pamilia said, every school site is different. Now for most of you that are in elementary school, just let me tell you that middle school looks so different in parent engagement. So hopefully we can work on that part because it looks completely different. It is like black and white. I know. But it is an adjustment, right? So we just have to see, pitch in ideas, like you said, and probably make it work. But get ready for middle school. It will look different.
If I could put in a plea to just stick there and be patient. It's been a traditional drop off of parent involvement when you get into middle school and high school. But we also find that when we open those doors and we really rely on our parent volunteers inside the secondary, inside the middle school and the high school, amazing things can happen, but it's traditionally not something that happens. So we have some learning to do and some things that we have to do. But I will say I loved seeing you at the open house with your own table, and I thought that pals, I've got high hopes. I have high hopes for the middle school, and really thanks to you.
And I believe it's most of the parents here, as soon as they move in, we are already like, we like to be around. We like to be a support for the school. It is a team. So we want to support you being part of that team so our students succeed, right? They achieve their goals. But yes, hopefully along the way with these plans, there is something that will bring in parents to support you and bring those numbers up.
Yeah, I do think so. I think a community school format and that framework for us to think about the school as the center, as the hub for your school community and the community around will really support that. So that will be coming in as well.
In this, I'm not sure if it's right here where we can ask or suggest. I have the idea to probably at the beginning of the year of my kid is starting every school year. We as parents on the first meeting, can we be given a curriculum of what they will see, probably a broad one, where they will see, like you said, this year is going to be fractions and they're going to learn the clock, the time, government. in a way that we can be more aware of what they're seeing. Is this something teachers can provide to parents? In that way also, I'm not sure if a presentation can be given, like going back to iReady. In iReady, they will learn these, just probably titles of what they see, all the topics. Um, and some of them we can have some knowledge at home and work on them just to keep it as a reminder for preparing, probably like for high school, I will say, when they will be taking all these tests to go to college or to move to a different school, to see what time in their learning years they learn these and they're gonna apply it here. I mean, they're gonna learn fraction in fourth grade and they will apply it when they take the MCAT, all those tests to apply. And I will need as parent. I myself would keep track of all those curriculums. Is that something that can be possible for parents to know? Because I tried online and I've been going through, but it's overwhelming the amount of information. You guys do have all the information needed. And I found probably more than I would need, but I don't have the one that I probably want to find.
Absolutely.
Yeah, something we can, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it helps create that partnership, parents and teachers.
Yeah, so I remember when my son was in kinder and first grade, we actually were provide the curriculum. Teachers explain us what they were gonna cover for the whole year. But then second, third, fourth, fifth, that didn't happen. So it will be great if every year could provide us that curriculum because it did help. It did help a lot.
And it just reminds me another one. I don't know if it is at our all school sites, but they present something like this for every unit at back to school night. And I think at that time, for my experience, it's really bad because not all the parents are there. And another thing, they are rushing. They are just waiting for the principal to finish whatever it is on the board. They're not even paying attention. To find a time so they can see, parents can see where the school is at. Like for all students, like knowing, math is this, English is this. Because sometimes you see and they say, oh, clap for this. And sometimes it is 35% out of 100. It's not great. Sometimes you have to have that experience, say, okay, let's see what we can do instead of being 35. Where do we move from 35 to reach a goal? But I think finding a time where to present that information when it's not like rushing, because parents want to go to meet their students' teacher.
I think that the
So
time when I saw the most amount of parents is the first day of school or the day when you meet the teacher. To me, that sounds like a good day because I saw almost like 70% of all the students that were gonna be in the classroom, all the parents, and they encourage for us to share information and stuff, but we can
Definitely have those conversations and taking in your experiences to come up with for sure just what to expect this school year is an important piece. I think, Mila, what you're talking about is also a little bit of where we are as a school, which is a little bit maybe in another time. And we can have all of these kinds of, as we develop, I would say like a syllabus for our parent center for, at each school, if we've got a parent center and we have these kinds of topics available for coffee and chats, we can do these things where we have a coffee and chat. And if you are interested as a parent to hear about the data of our school, come to the coffee and chat, right? And so those kinds of things we can absolutely set up. Because it's already 10:13, what I just want to make sure is that, are there any questions about somehow, like what we see, we are in year 2 of our LCAP. we continue with the plans that we were doing before, and we're kind of highlighting and doing, and we're tweaking. That's what we're doing. We're tweaking some of those actions so you can see examples of some of those tweaks that you heard today. Does anybody have any questions that you would like me to make sure that I address?
I do. I know you have sent a survey for us to have, like, for us to tell you if we have any questions, comments, or observations about our school site. Did you get a lot of responses from our parents? Because sometimes, I mean, this is just a tiny fraction of the school. But did you get a lot of feedback? Because sometimes we have so many opinions, when this is the opportunity to express our opinions instead of waiting to react to something, instead of being proactive.
Question number one is, did we get a lot of responses to the survey questions? They're still being analyzed right now. I was hoping I would be able to give you that analysis in today's LCAP, but I don't have it because we're not ready for it yet. We have it as a question that you've given it. We will provide a written response to say kind of what that response has been. So as soon as we're done with this, and once we have that ready, we'll get that analysis ready and put it in here. The second part to that question that you have, we will take that input, we will take the survey information, it goes directly into the LCAP. So there will be a section in the plan that says feedback based on this many parents said that these are the things that are working well. These are the things that we should be paying more attention to. And that also informs kind of the tweaks that we do for following years.
The question in the chat is from Jessica Best. Yes, I think. Is that data being discussed in the school site council meetings? And are all parents invited and able to attend?
The data for the LCAP survey hasn't been analyzed yet, and so it won't go into probably a school site council meeting this year because most of you are finishing up. So the LCAP survey will go into the LCAP. You'll be able to look at that at next year's school site council meetings and have that as part of your conversations for next year. The second question of are parents invited to the school site council? Absolutely. They are advertised with where they are and when they are occurring. And parents are welcome to attend as observers to kind of hear what's going on. There's usually like a time in the agenda for them to ask questions. Yeah.
One last question.
Yes.
I know the LCAP committee is composed of administrators, staff, classified, and parents, right? Is that still happening?
So right now, because we've done our 3-year plan, we did the planning last year and we made the plan last year. So now we're reporting on our actions of the plans to the various groups. So our bargaining units, we have conversations with our union presidents. We have conversations. This should be happening in your school site councils. It should be happening here, like in the DPAC and the DLAB and the Committee for Multilingual Learners. So those kinds of things, it's more like updates right now going on. At the 3rd year, we'll convene into a giant committee again to think about our next 3-year plan.
Jessica Vasquez said that she meant that the school-specific data, academic progress, are LCAP goals being met? How can each school improve?
Yes, that happens in the school site council. The plan is made, each school site looks at their school-specific data, and that is the entire purpose of the school site council, is to look at their data and improve for student achievement. They don't only look at unduplicated students because that's what their site allocations might do, but there's also all students, and then there's Title I students to meet the needs for the Title I funding.
Real quick, first of all, I hear her story right now, and I think that's a great segue to DPAC and why DPAC is imperative to join. So that's something to get those voices and your concerns out. I like the part with the teacher leaders teaching alongside teachers. My question is, those teachers aren't really there to assess really the situation of the classroom, but could that be kind of included? Because now what I'm hearing from, not just her, but a lot of parents is that teacher stress, teacher burnout. So, we can notice a lot of people coming into the classroom, and this might be something to kind of add to that, maybe to find out where that teacher is, because when we start hearing a lot of, frustrations, not of just of the class, but when she's walking and seeing these, teachers kind of with the outbursts, we've heard a lot of different stuff targeted to certain students. Could that be implemented somewhere along those lines, or is that something completely different? Because I know that you want to kind of just, have that as more of an aid, it sounds like, to kind of teach within the process, but is that something that could be again?
I think it's not a completely different, I think it's a parallel process. I probably wouldn't intersect those. I want our teacher leaders to really be a support system and be a content expert in their field. So in the lower grades, there'll be literacy experts working on the literacy standards for their students to really master reading. Mathematics experts, contents going in grades 3 through 5. Without going through this is a little bit of a pilot and an experiment for us, but we do know it's research backed. But if we're able to provide that kind of support in an area of content, where engagement is a big piece. If students aren't learning, sometimes they aren't engaged, and we can have a content expert to bring in engagement strategies to get to the content better. I don't know if I can make a correlation, but I might extrapolate that maybe it becomes a little bit less stressful for a teacher because they're getting that kind of support in the instruction and they're actually getting it a little bit better. So that is something that we can measure and can take a look and measure a teacher's sense of support, feeling like I'm being supported in this avenue. And then we might be able to measure something like that. On the parallel line, I'm going to jump a track and I'm going to go here and I'm going to say that is kind of where we're getting the data, that we're collecting the data, and then we're going to be having those conversations about what are some of those things that we want to identify as a school-wide goal, maybe a grade level wide goal, and a personal goal to say, hey, and I'm just going to use the 5-to-1 just because I've already explained that strategy, but that might become a school-wide goal. Everybody, let's really hone in on the 5-to-1. And then we would do that. So I see that as a parallel. I really appreciate all of your questions. It gives me also information about your experience, and I never want to I don't want to forget that part, because sometimes when we're in our hole, like we just see one way going this way. But to your point, we're in a neighborhood and there's everybody seeing how we're doing it. And you can see when it's going really well. And you can see when there might be some little things that we could do, right? And so to make it better. So I appreciate everybody who came in this morning, anybody who's on Zoom, giving us those questions. We'll collect those questions and provide answers and have it ready on our website, within the next couple of weeks. And then actually next steps as well is that this information also is being written into our next kind of our year 2 LCAP, and that gets approved. We'll provide a presentation to the board on June 5th. Is that a Thursday?
Here's the
I think it's a June 5th, where we'll be providing a presentation to the board about the LCAP. And then 2 weeks later, we, the board of trustees will approve the second year LCAP. And so that's the process of how it goes. And then that money, then we say what we're going to do, then we're going to move forward and we're going to do it next year. Okay? That's what the LCAP process entails. Thank you so much. I did take up the entire